get this party started.
The Cabin in the Woods. One of the few horror movies to ever give me a husband's bulge.
But cutting the flesh makes him have a husband's bulge, and I do not get like that.
But honestly, can we really call this movie just a horror movie? It's funny enough to at least be considered a legitimate horror comedy, and it pays enough homage to earlier horror films to be considered a pastiche. This movie is all about the meta, and I promise that's the only time I'll say meta in this entire video. I promise. It's thankfully subtle, but at times it even seems satirical in regards to stereotypical horror movie components.
Come on! Fucking zombie arm!
I came to this movie because of my love of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and my willingness to watch most anything created by a certain core group of people associated with the show. Mainly the writing and production staff more so than the actors and actresses, not to take anything away from the acting talent, but if I watched everything that they were in, I wouldn't have time for anything else. The Cabin in the Woods premiered in 2011 and was officially released in the US in April of 2012. The screenplay was written by Buffy alum and Cloverfield screenwriter Drew Goddard, as well as Buffy creator, alleged predatory male feminist, and woke cancelee Joss Whedon. We'll try our best to separate the art from the artist here, because no matter how you slice it, Joss Whedon writes fantastic dialogue.
Do it! Where's zombie arm?
The Cabin in the Woods, which celebrates cliché horror movie tropes at every turn, actually begins in a very unique way for a feature-length movie. After a short credit sequence, we have a cold opening that goes straight into the fantastic dialogue I just mentioned. We're introduced to the comic relief for the film, Gary and Steve, played by Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford, respectively.
Ooh, does this mean you're not in the betting pool this year? Big money?
I'm just saying it's a key scenario.
No, I hear what you're saying. In '98, it was the chem department's fault, right? Where do you work again? Wait, it's coming back to me now.
Most people will remember Richard Jenkins for his memorable role in Step Brothers, and Bradley Whitford from his role as Roger in Revenge of the Nerds Part 2, Nerds in Paradise, and from other great stuff like The West Wing and Billy Madison.
It's gonna be a long weekend if everyone's that puckered up. So you want to come over Monday night? I'm going to pick up some power drills, liberate my cabinets.
The dialogue in this scene doesn't seem to do much for the plot at this point, but its intention here is to introduce us to these two characters and give us an idea of the people they are. It's going to be a key to the audience to grasp the fact that these two, while caught up in an evil scheme, are not actually evil themselves. Well, it's debatable. This is an accomplishment considering everything else that's going on here. We're introduced to a mysterious underground facility with many different people in the frames that seem to be in the same situation as Gary and Steve. Is this a government facility? Some scientific research center? A vast criminal enterprise? Who knows at this point? The anticipation that it creates alongside the nonchalant dialogue does well to set the tone for this movie. The next character we're introduced to is Wendy Lynn, head of the chemistry department. She's played by Amy Acker, who played the lovable Winifred Burkle in the TV series Angel. We figure out at this point, as we meet an egg-headed scientist that's worried about some technology-related thing that we care absolutely nothing about, how hard the screenwriters are trying to convey to us that every character we meet in this movie is going to be a stereotypical caricature of an already existing movie trope. This movie is satirical at times, but not really in a malicious way. It's obviously poking fun at many previous horror films, both of the cheesy and classy variety, but it seems more loving than anything else. The end of the cold opening sequence could be considered a jump scare, but considering it's only the beginning of the title credits, it's obviously a silly little joke. But a good one.
Are you even listening to me?
The great achievement of this movie is its ability to take the most stereotypical parts of horror movies and turn them into a self-aware film that still manages to entertain the audience on several different levels.
People in this town drive in a very counterintuitive manner. That's what I have to say.
The Cabin in the Woods takes the entire history of horror films, boils them down to their lowest common denominator, and uses it as a delicious gravy on top of a fresh new idea. We start with the common list of horror movie characters. The athlete, Kurt, played by Chris Hemsworth. The whore, Jules, played by Anna Hutchison. The fool, Marty, played by Fran Kranz. The virgin, Dana, played by Kristen Connolly. And the scholar, Holden, played by Jesse Williams. Now, the way this film makes things a little different than the stereotypical horror movie, these characters don't start off as these stereotypes. They actually are manipulated by Steve and Gary and the rest of the crew in the mysterious underground facility into becoming these stereotypes through chemical manipulation and other such means. They pump pheromones and chemicals in the air, as well as find clever ways to drug the unwitting college students. The basic plot of this film revolves around Kurt planning a getaway at his cousin's cabin in the woods for his friends. Very simple, and proven to be a direct homage to the Evil Dead movies, once we see the actual cabin itself. The obvious twist of the movie is revealed as soon as the gang first heads off from the camper. We see a man on top of the building with an earpiece letting someone know they're leaving. This immediately connects the cold opening with the introduction of the main characters that follows it. By the time the gang gets to the mountain pass on the way to the cabin and the eagle smashes into the force field, the audience should be sure at this point that the people in the facility are somehow in control of what's happening to the other characters. Before this video just becomes me basically explaining the plot out to you, we're going to shift directions a little bit and talk about what exactly makes this movie unique and memorable. That way, those of you that haven't had the opportunity to watch it yet will still get some value out of it when you finally get around to watching it. For those of you who have seen the film, let me know what you think about my take in the comments section. Even if left unnamed, even if left mostly unknown or ambiguous, the bad guys in most horror movies are evil. We don't need to question how we feel about Leatherface, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, or any classic horror movie killer. They're evil, plain and simple. This is why I have such a hot take on origin stories. Trying to get into the heads of these killers and attempting to sympathize with them takes everything away from the atrocities they've committed. Any compassion that we feel for these characters takes away from the compassion that you should be feeling for their victims and the families of them. The beauty of the horror genre is the clear-cut boundaries between good and evil. Take Hellraiser for an example. For all its examples of depravity, it's clear that the goal of this film is not to glorify these things. Good people do bad things, but to be complete and pure evil is to completely lose your humanity. The thing about true evil, nobody wants to believe that a human being is actually that. Sure, we do bad things, but we aren't evil. But in a horror movie, someone has to be evil and do the killing. The further away that thing is from being a human being, the more comfortable it is for us to watch it. That's why Buffy the Vampire Slayer was so great. They could kill vampires and demons in every episode to satisfy our need for violence, then save the human death for the occasional hard-hitting emotional moment. Writer and director Drew Goddard manages to do just that in Cabin in the Woods. The concept is pretty amazing. A movie where you can understand and sympathize with the motivations of every single human character in the movie. On the surface, Steve and Gary seem to be evil, but at second glance we understand that they are benevolent in their own ideals. Their belief is in the greater good, not the good of each individual. The people involved in the facility believe they are doing a service to mankind as a whole.
It's so strange. I'm actually rooting for this girl. She's got so much heart. Can you think of all the pain and the...
So here's the spoiler alert, but it doesn't really ruin it too much, just kind of gets us to the point a little bit faster. This is all an orchestrated ritual. To what and why I'll not go into detail, but the basics are important to understand. In this movie, Human sacrifice has always been essential to the survival of the human race. The facility, along with several more throughout the world, completes ritual human sacrifices to stave off the end of the world. This fun conspiracy aspect of the movie is pretty interesting, and it also recreates a well-fought battle of classical ethics. If we tend to be utilitarian in our ethics and agree with Jeremy Bentham, we make our decisions on the best possible outcome for the greater good. If we ascribe to the ethics of Immanuel Kant, then we would be compelled to follow our own convictions, which should mean not being able to cause another human being any harm, no matter if the cost is the end of humanity itself. This is the problem that this movie faces when you look at it on a deep level. Are Steve, Gary, and the rest of the workers at the facility really evil if they're actually saving humanity? Is the willingness to commit murder for the sake of the greater good acceptable? I propose that what makes this movie so interesting is that you can't place any fault on the motivation of any given character in it. Sure, it's obviously crass for the people at the facility to place bets on which nightmare monsters are going to awaken, but we have to accept that they'd be somewhat desensitized to the situation. I would maybe say they aren't desensitized, but deeply disturbed and struggling with what they're doing and using gambling and drinking as an escape from their struggle.
God damn, that was close.
Yeah, photo fucking finish.
What we have to accept here, no matter how hard to swallow, is that these people are actually saving humanity from an apocalypse. If they don't complete the ritual, the entirety of humanity will be destroyed. These people are doing work that saves the entirety of mankind. Do they accept that they are morally corrupt in doing it? Maybe this is similar to another one of Joss Whedon's characters from a different film. In the movie Serenity, which was a follow-up to the Firefly TV series that Joss Whedon created, the operative, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor,
yeah, Charlie Hotel India Whiskey Echo Tango Echo Lima.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, Echo Juliet India Oscar Foxtrot Oscar Romeo.
lays it out pretty well in this exchange with Captain Reynolds.
I believe in something greater than myself. A better world. A world without sin.
So me and mine gotta lay down and die so you can live in your better world?
I'm not going to live there. There's no place for me there, any more than there is for you. Malcolm, I'm a monster. What I do is evil. I have no illusions about it, but it must be done.
He knows he doesn't belong in society, and he uses this as an excuse to commit heinous acts in the name of society. Are they noble acts? Is this something people are born with? Or are these types of people made like this over time? I would say over time, and I think the movie agrees with me. You can see the age gap between Steve and Gary. This suggests they didn't come to their current positions together, but one after another. There are interns at the facility, so we know they take on new employees. And another brilliant addition by the writers here, Truman, the security guard, who's kind of the proxy for the audience.
You're celebrating?
They're celebrating. I'm drinking.
But she's still alive. How can the ritual be complete?
Truman is new to the facility and seems to have just about as much understanding about the workings of the facility as we do. He has the same questions that the audience has and the same reactions that we have to the behavior of the other people in the facility. Truman is a brilliant insert by the writers as to not get too blatantly in our face with exposition and to help us understand how people could do this kind of work. It almost seems like the bureaucracy and formality of the facility is a distraction, and what they can't fix with that, well, then there's alcohol.
Tequila is my lady! My lady! Come on in, guys. Come on in. Come on in. You're welcome.
Okay, so I can't make a video about the cabin in the woods without at least talking about the monsters for a little while. I've done pretty well to keep the spoilers away, but I think this part of the movie at least needs to be teased a little bit. If I was on the fence about taking the time to watch this movie, this stuff would be what pushed me over. There are so many different horror movie references here, it's hard to count. The sequence of the movie is just visually spectacular. There's already plenty of YouTubers, though, that have done videos about the monsters and the movies they reference, so I won't get far into it. So I'll just show you this.
Oh, shit.
Man, that scene fucking slaps. Aside from all the cool visuals here, this movie is about the characters and their emotions, which was very refreshing in 2012 for the horror genre. The ethical struggle is real here too. There's not so much clear-cut good and evil as we've been used to thus far either. But it's things like that which make this movie memorable. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it. If you have, then I hope this has at least increased its rewatchability for you. Before I wrap things up, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's been watching my videos and subscribing to my channel lately. I really appreciate all you guys, and I'd like to encourage you all to comment. It's really nice to be able to communicate with like-minded people. Thank you guys for watching. Hi everybody, I'm Patrick, and this is Ragnarok and Revolutionize. Ragnarok and Revolutionize.